So, hi everyone. Very, very glad to be here, to be honest. It's really a pleasure to be with such an amazing panel with such brilliant minds that I really hope to learn a lot today from. I will sound like a kid at times because I'm really, really keen into this topic of these alternatives from virtual sports and esports, and I really expect to learn a lot today. I won't be talking too much because you guys are the stars, not myself. And we'll just do a small presentation of you so everyone knows who's on that side. And that we just throw the topics and we will share our knowledge. I've told you before, we might be at some point interrupted by three very interested cats in terms of esports and virtual sports, but I'll translate everything. So if they have any questions, I'll pop it up to you guys. I'm Vasco, by the way. I'm the SEO manager of Dowling Global. So if you're looking for translations, content, SEO, just come to us. We will help you on that area. And let me start by introducing you guys. I'll start with Tassos, which is the sales director of Golden Brace, Virtual Sports and Betting Solution. Hi, Tassos.
Hello,
welcome. Robert Toth, business development manager of Global Bet Virtual Sports. Hi, Robert. Robert Dowling, our chief commercial officer at Singular. I think the only person who's actually at the office right now. And even Rozić, the Senior Vice President for Global Sales and Business Development at NSoft. I really hope I didn't get your title wrong. I think I did it right.
Keep it to Ivan. And that's it.
Okay, I'll keep it to Ivan. And Dr. Holger, Jakob, we all know him, a senior lawyer at MELCHERS Law. Welcome, guys. And again, I'm really, really humbled to be here because you're all such a brilliant minds that it's to me, it's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure to be here. The first thing I would like to talk to you is this is the $1 million question, obviously, and there's a huge talk about virtual sports, about fantasy sports, and esports, and social gaming, and how much it's taking over, and how much it's becoming more than an alternative to classic sports betting, but a real thing, something that at least we all expect to stay and get stronger. And my first question, I will probably ask you, Tassos, because we spoke about this before. Do you have any specific, do you have numbers to support what we're saying, that you can actually share with us in terms of, okay, is this something that happened because of the pandemic? Is this something that is a stopgap, meaning it's something that we found out that we can, sportsbooks found that could replace classic sports betting, or this is something that it's here to stay? I know virtual sports exists for a long time, but can we expect the growth to continue, or are we just talking about something generational, spontaneous? What can you share with us?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to join and to save myself to wear a shirt for a change. So this actually was a day to remember in this 3 weeks time. So anyhow, as you said correctly, I think it was back on March 7th that I got back to Athens from Prague Gaming Summit, and actually in 3-4 days the first measures were in place in Greece. Okay. So it was a storm that caught us off guard, and what we detected is that in essence what you said, the companies were starting to find alternatives to face all this sudden impact on their businesses. So I mean, being in the virtual games industry, and I think it's the only time I will not define virtual games, because now there's a hype, so I suppose that everybody knows about that, and actually one also can elaborate more. We did see a surge starting from March 15th. We actually detected that increased their traffic tenfold. Let's say as Golden Race as a whole, I mean, we make about 15 million bets per day on our system. We actually saw that in March, we had a total increase between retail and online of 21%. However, the online part was almost doubled. Having said that, since we're talking about virtual games and alternative kind of betting opportunities, we should note that also Ivan pointed out in some pre-panel discussion we had, that virtual games suffered as well from the crisis, because it's predominantly, even now, a retail business. So we found ourselves as well in, following this crisis wave, a big time. However, we did see this surge on the online betting, and also, I would say, a qualitative more than quantitative surge in our, let's say, presence. I mean, yes, our traffic was double, but have in mind, please, that this lasted 2-3 weeks. Following that, given that the visitability of the sites anyhow decreased, and also the available income of punters decreased, we did see, a normalization of business. Yes, higher than before, but still, let's say, normalized and not having nothing to do with this sudden peak of the end of March. Now, in a general level, we have, according to some statistics we have from Optimo, for instance, we see that the virtual games players average number increased by 200%, followed by the online poker players and, the other segments as well. And also the interest, obviously, according to some surveys, was high, and the awareness of the virtual games and all the other segments too. Coming back to, to your first, let's say, topic, if this will stay, yes, I think it will remain. I mean, it was a fast replacement option, obviously. And for me, at least, it was maybe the most hectic period in my life in Golden Race. We did sign a lot of customers, projects that were lingering around for a couple of years, maybe. And finally, now, due to this pressure, they came into life. Integrations delayed or prospects delayed. Now, we found ourselves with about 100 new clients, some of them big names in the market, like AAA, Aspire Global, for instance, Interveden, Typico. So yes, there is a quantitative upgrade, obviously. Everything comes into place. This is my notion, but still in not normalized levels. And in essence, it was a chance for even the doubtful minds to understand that apart from their sportsbook, there are other segments that may stand side to it and offer some revenue, which is in essence risk-free, being RNG-based.
Yeah, thank you for that. And especially because to understand that this is not something spontaneous and it's something that's been happening before and will continue. Maybe I'll forward the same question to Robert Toth. So if on your side, Robert, you have the same feeling as Tassos, or if anything on your side and your company, if you saw any change or anything different in terms of the numbers and the impact, or what you guys expected this to become in the near future, in the long run.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be together with you, with industry professionals. Yes, we noticed a very, very strong increase in numbers when it comes to online virtual sports. I cannot tell you exact numbers because different countries implemented the lockdown at different times. But I can say that we experienced a growth of around 250 to 300%, which is massive for online. On the other hand, in retail, we got a very, very strong hit, especially in Italy, one of our biggest markets, where all the retail shops were closed. So yeah, online-wise, it's definitely a massive growth.
Okay.
Finally realized that virtual sports needs to be taken seriously, especially operators who strongly relied on sportsbook. I can say the same as Tassos. We had a lot of projects that were lingering, and all of a sudden, operators were contacting us. We need to go online, and obviously a lot of new customers as well. So it's a very tough month for me and my colleagues because we all work even more than before.
It went from under the radar to priority number one. I got that feeling. And you were both talking about something that it's quite interesting in terms of the high volumes of online searches and high volumes and different volumes than they were before. And I think this refers back to probably even in terms of the technical challenges. And I think you approach a little bit about this. How we had to adapt virtual games to the increase of the online demand and actually the challenges that bring, because in my idea, I'm not the expert here in this area, but there are new challenges that virtual sports and esports bring to the table, technical factors that come to the table that you guys need to come up with solutions with. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that, Ivan?
Sure. I mean, I'm just going to take up what Tassos and Robert already mentioned. I feel like, those teenage movies where, you have that ugly girl that throughout the movie everybody wants to date with, and then at the end she becomes the beautiful princess that everybody's waiting for. So this is pretty much what happens to everybody providing virtual sports, I think, in this segment. With Tassos and Robert, my fellow colleagues, I think for them it was even more hectic since, their major focus is virtual sports, while NSoft has more of a focus on the virtual numbers games. So, but then again, we still see a lot of interest because, I mean, it's an alternative to betting nonetheless. You can see with esports as social gaming, with pretty much with poker, especially, like pretty much any other product out there. And for me, what I think is going to happen in general, I don't think it's going to replace sports, just to be quite frank. Not even esports, not virtual sports, any kind of content that we came up with, that the operators came up with to kind of engage their customers. It's not going to be sticking for long in terms of the numbers that we're seeing, and we can already see that happening, but it will help a lot in terms of bringing the products closer to the online. We have done that in NSoft. We have done major improvements on our products in order to suit them better for the online. As I mentioned beforehand, when we were discussing, all of the providers for virtual games are at least 50% of their traffic is coming from the retail, and this was amazing because in an instant, like you were trying to diversify your risk geographically, having markets all over the place, and then one swipe and everybody's closed. So there's nowhere to go to but online, and you have no other option but to actually prepare your games for the online world. I think a good example is Golden Race, what they did in Spain. I mean, it was motivated by Spain regulation, where the virtual games have now been on demand to suit the regulation in Spain, which is a good example of what's happening. This happened before the crisis, but basically we have done the same during the crisis and before the crisis to bring the product closer to improve speed of the game, to shorten the round duration, to kind of emphasize more, to cut down on potential churn points for in the user interface. So there's been a lot of progress, and I think one more good example is what I've seen from BetRadar, their esports offering that they had. They packaged it and sent it to operators the way they do for all the sports. And this is, I think their reaction in esports area has been pretty much dampened for a long time. But what they did in these last couple of weeks with the new kind of interface for the esports, it just brought this segment much closer, and I think it managed to attract a lot of players that were traditionally, liked classical sports. And I think this is the major impact that we're going to be seeing, that further down the road, there's going to be a lot of new players that have been drawn into these games, whether it's virtual games, virtual sports, whether it's esports. I think the whole industry has made it easier for traditional punters to investigate other content as well.
Okay, that's super interesting. It's one of the questions that when I started to investigate the topic, and mainly how much would this be actually an alternative to classic sports betting, a replacement to classic sports betting? I think it will never be a replacement, but an alternative is something else people are actually betting on and keen on. And one of the questions that kept popping up my mind was, is this a generational thing? Is this something that it's okay, are talking about Generation Y, but then this will go away? In terms of, not just geographically, but in terms of the age, in terms of the how much you're targeting in terms of your audience. Is this generational? It's like a generational spurt, but it might go down because it doesn't look like it. But again, what are we talking about? Because it seems that the even if it's generational, the tendency and what it seems to be happening is that it tends to increase, not to decrease, because these new generations are much more keen to esports, to virtual sports, to the virtual world. I had recently a conversation with a much younger person than I am, and the conversation, virtual sports and esports, she was mentioning it like common sports, like a football match or anything else. For them, it's exactly the same thing. And I was arguing, come on, but it's digital. No, but it's a sports. I mean, we are competing. We have goals. And my question, maybe now to Robert Dowling, how do you see this? This is generational. How do you see this, and how this is impacting Singular in terms of the differences between one and the other?
So from an impact on Singular, I mean, we obviously have struggled a lot as well, and we will. I think this period will be known for sportsbook people as the pre-COVID and post-COVID. And I'd like to tackle two challenges that I've seen actually have, especially the generation impact as well. So the first one I would say is like the lack from a lot of sportsbooks that were available. There was no overview, no insight onto what other products were available until this came around, and we saw from us being software developers. We saw a lot of our clients requesting very quickly to integrate and onboard these things. But one thing I want to bring in, why I'm saying this, is because what I saw as well was also a lack of the way that people would market certain tools and certain products. And they didn't have the knowledge, or they didn't have the understanding, or let's say they weren't aware of the way that esports players, or let's say virtual players, would request the marketing to come to them in a different way. And that was maybe where I saw the gap issue. Esports coming into the market, yes, I think it is here. I think it is here to stay. I think it is going to grow. If you look in Asia, look in Korea, the numbers in esports are phenomenal. Just taking a look at GoTo Gamers and all the other different sites where you see there's a lot of traction and a lot of, let's say, affiliate traffic passing for esports. It is incredible the amount of volumes that are coming in from Asia. In Europe, the numbers are not yet as high, maybe because betting is looked at with something more of a Generation X, Generation Y period, where millennials are not yet really, the millennials are more into betting in a different way. We're still starting to see that, but it's also the way we are receiving the odds, presenting the odds, delivering the odds. Maybe we need to look at it in a different way and not say it's a 1x2 sort of combo, but it needs to be a different form of way of actually presenting the esports odds. So the knowledge that we have gained now from having real numbers, seeing real punters play these games, is where we can see how we can develop our software to better present esports games, to better present esports betting and virtual betting and many other different alternative forms that popped up during this period, and actually say, okay, we now finally understand what it is, because we have seen the numbers working. We have seen people come in and play. Now we can maximize on those numbers. And as you say, this would, in my opinion, this would be a quantitative research without having wanted to do it on why and how esports could actually work. And I can't wait to see where this can go from here. I hope that it keeps on going post-COVID, and the way we present our sports, where we present the different games or markets, is done in cohesion with the way, let's say, the esports market would require it for people that like playing esports.
It's you brought some interesting things, because and again, you guys are the experts. You can prove me wrong, but the way I see it, in terms of the audience, it can only grow. And you talk about Asian markets, and I researched some numbers, and the numbers are huge. We're talking about billion-dollar markets. So there's a market there in terms of the gaming, in terms of the esports, in terms of the virtual sports. So the market is there. In terms of the gaming itself, it's just a matter of transposing it or passing it to the sports betting reality and to the betting reality. And that's my question. How difficult is that? Because they bring new challenges. It's not the typical odds that, as you said, present this typical way to present odds, the typical match, you either win, draw, or how much it is. So there are new challenges, and you think with this pandemic at least worked in a way that could help us get the knowledge and the tools and the know-how to now have the best options to provide to the customers?
If you look at some numbers that has happened during the pandemic, I mean, just general numbers like how people put on a bit of weight, how people watched a bit more TV, Netflix and everything, there also was a huge spike in people playing video games and people playing League of Legends and people playing Dota, which are games that are generally played on esports, because obviously there was a social community that was generated from that. So we saw more amount of people in the European market starting to play this game, which creates a fan base. Once you create a fan base and an understanding of the game, I mean, you might actually want to watch somebody play the game better than you, and you might actually be more interested in betting or having, let's say, starting off with a cheeky fiver, which is the way we all started playing on Manchester, and very disappointedly didn't get anywhere, and end up by putting a cheeky fiver of League of Legends or on Dota or FIFA nowadays. I mean, on e-soccer. I believe that one of the biggest challenges that we might need to go to, which we'll probably bring in Jakob here as well, is regulation as well for esports, because at the moment there isn't much regulation in esports. And I'm a firm believer. In fact, I believe in Budapest, I had this argument with someone on the panel where I believe that the platform itself that hosts the games and the games itself need to be, to a certain extent, regulated by a regulator to make sure that the outcome of the game is not affected by somebody else. There's no agenda, there's no nothing. So far, what is regulated is the player data, is the flow of money, it's where you can actually offer these games, but there's no regulation that actually regulates the outcome of the game, which this is something that I believe in. But as I said, these are challenges, and I think that is maybe something that you can take on to Jakob from here.
Yeah, I think that you just laid out the ground, so I can introduce now the question to. That's perfect, to Dr. Holger. Jakob, okay, let's go into the legal issues and the regulation, the landscape. How is it? How it can be? I understand that people doubt a lot about, because it's all virtual. So is it rigged or is it not? What can we do legally to actually, or what is there in place already to ease people to bet on virtual sports and esports?
So we are facing the problems with.
Okay, I think I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. With the normal regulatory issues in Germany, like sports betting license and online casino is still banned in Germany. So the lawmaker isn't ready for this innovative kind of stuff, like esports and virtual sports. They don't want to regulate it, I think, because as you said, the market is there, but the lawmakers are not willing to regulate.
I'm not sure if Dr. Olo is talking because I cannot hear him.
I'm talking. I'm talking.
And it's actually pretty good. I think we can give you a cue when he's done.
Yes, I think it's better. And then someone will have to brief me on what's being said. So you will all be tested now. You'll be seeing. I will see if you guys understood what was said.
I might have a question for you as well.
Okay, so. The politicians acknowledged that esports is sports, but they haven't transformed it into law yet. So we're facing a gap there, and investors have to prove if you can do enterprises with betting on esports, and the market is there. We have already offerings with esports betting in Germany, but it's not regulated by law and by the authorities. So it's a kind of gray or even black market. But I want to come back to the question: is it a new chance or is it growing? I mean, you see the natural growing of esports and gaming for the last 20 years now, and what we need now is a grown interest in gambling on this kind of stuff. So, and this isn't there yet, but it's growing, and the publishers have already found a way with loot boxes and other virtual items to find their place in this gambling-related market. And now the whole entertainment industry has to be innovative to find different kind of gambling possibilities in this area. And what I find interesting is that the esports part is a lot more data-driven than the fans in traditional sports. So if I think Bayern Munich will win against Werder Bremen, I bet on it. And I think that Lewandowski scores, I bet on it. But in esports game, there are so many different ways to bet on a kind of Ablauf, kind of how this guy will shoot, how often will shoot. It's so many possibilities in this digital area. So it will change a lot. I think gambling will change a lot in terms of esports.
Okay. My question was though to you is if esports is like kind of coming up and it's a gray area in Germany, is it at the moment considered more like a sports book, so it will fall under, let's say, sports book regulation, or will they maybe there's just no regulation whatsoever for it?
Yeah, difficult question, because we are in these licensing proceedings at the moment, and we are advising our clients to give the sports betting program and also their esports programs to the application. So, and then we will see what the authorities will come back with.
Fair enough. Germany has been a Pandora's box for quite a few years now with getting new roads and out. Vasco, I think Dr. Holger has finished.
Yes, sorry for this awkward moment, but again,
I don't
technology.
know why.
Unfortunately, I was not able to follow what was said, but the audience was, which is the whole purpose of all this. I will try to follow up, not as much as what was said, but again, these are all questions that we have and that we think about, because it's not something new, but it's something that came along, and we need to be prepared. And if the idea is for this to continue after the crisis and after the pandemic, we do need to address all these questions. And I think we brought this before, but I think it's interesting that we talk about it, because again, this is a huge market. The market is there, and but the crisis will be over. So the pandemic will be over, and we will need to understand whether this will continue or not, and whether this and the solutions that we have will actually work. Because at the moment, as far as I can see, this became a replacement of the classic sports betting, and because it stopped. I mean, all the competitions or the major competitions are stopped, are postponed, and what we have right now, it's a replacement. But at some point, they will come hand in hand, because we will have both the competitions back. So we will have the classic sports betting back, and you will have at the same time this growing betting coming side by side. And my question, and maybe to you all, are we, if the challenge continues, and let's say, okay, even if the numbers drop a little bit, but they continue even if a little, are we up to the challenge to provide both classic and this new era of sports betting and betting? Are we ready technically? Are we ready in terms of the solutions we have to the client and the new ideas and new games? Are we ready to provide this to the customers? I'll do a cross question, because I think this relates to all of us. So if you guys can share.
Can I start from
yeah, sure.
I'll open up. What we do, where we provide online and retail software for our operators to be able to use Global Bet or Golden Races product, let's say, in their in their retail stores and obviously online. So we do all the integration and everything. So from our end, we are obviously ready, and we're ready to take on all the esports and all the virtuals and all the different, let's say, alternative products that have been made available, came into fruition at the moment in the market. The only challenge that we've had from our end, because we were in the process of getting a lot of our operators live prior to the Euros, so there was all that rush, where this wasn't a priority for us, and suddenly all these alternative products have become a priority over classic sports. So the integration roadmap is obviously brutal, and that is the challenge that we are facing for being able to offer these products. Other than that, once the integration is done, I believe all integrations are done, we are in a very good position to offer our operators or any future operators, obviously, sales pitch, any future operators or any operators, something where they can have their retail, where if retail opens up again, their punters can go to the stores, they're online. We are geared up for it and ready for it. Obviously, the only issue I have seen was from a technical perspective, just getting integrations done and getting product available to the operators, which then goes to the punters. I think the same would be shared by most of my colleagues here.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And this is one of the major things I've seen in this period is the time to market that has really accelerated. I mean, typically when we do integrations, basic online integrations, for us, like an average, I think it was 13 days in total, including weekends as well. Now it has, picked up. I think the average now is 6 days. Most of the time is because part of the work is done on the platform side, part of the work is done on the side, but now everybody's focused on it, and you get. I think we had a release that was within 24 hours, from start of the integration to the launch and production, which was sometimes impossible to envision. And you got as my colleagues already previously mentioned, you got big operators looking for extra content. We signed a deal with Betway, with Caliente, with Mention 88, with all these guys that are now looking to expand their portfolio because they need to offer something to their partners. And I think when you see all the content that's out there, it's kind of perfectly aligned because I don't think esports and virtual sports are targeting the same audience at all. I think it's completely different punter base. And one more thing that we need to take in consideration is that it was here before. Esports was on, all of the major or basically every bookmaker that cares about his brand and image needs to have esports. And the same goes with virtuals. And I think it's just going to be even more, a tighter relationship from now on. But I think we need to take in consideration the relative and nominal growth because in average, I think virtual sports are making about 2 to 3% GGR for each online operator in normal circumstances. Now it grew a lot because the overall GGR has dropped significantly. But when things get back to normal, if you can get to 4 or 5% in average, that would be a huge success. And I think this is what we need to, be considerate of. And we need to be realistic about these numbers. And I think that, the major improvement is, I'm going to go back to I can't remember who was actually the author of the quote, but I think the quote was something along the lines that we have done the digital adaptation that has been done in the last 2 months is usually done in the 2 years time. So I think this has happened with our punters as well, and with us all, even included in here. I've never experienced so many online events and so many online conferences until these last couple of months, and now I've learned to use 4 different tools to do these conferences, and I think it goes the same for the punters and for all of us included in these times.
Yeah, and I can see, first from our side, even talking personally, the type of services we provide. We are more of a language provider, but we did learn about with this, and that's one of the questions probably I would address to Tassos and Robert, because you were already providing the service before, the virtual sports were already there. Are you learning either in terms of technical issues or other your audience? Did it change, or can you feel any change with this pandemic in terms of know-how that you are getting from it, because it's the higher demand, because it's a different demand, everything is for yesterday? Can you, if you both of you, probably Tassos you first and then Robert, were you able to learn? I'm talking in the past. I know the pandemic is still on, but we all hope it's eventually go. Were we able to learn, or you guys were able to learn something from this, even in terms of audience?
Yes. Well, actually, I mean, we had the product coincidentally. I mean, this was a conscious decision, built as a sportsbook. So it was a sportsbook with multiple leagues, multiple tracks, but with virtual outcome. So it seemed to be a perfect replacement to the real sportsbook. And what we did based on the feedback we received, we even added some features so as to make it even more sportsbook-like and actually having a zero learning curve for the punters. Obviously, we were also pushed to the limits in regard to integration because now it was a time. So either we could go live with some new clients or we could wait another couple of years maybe. So it was, I think the whole organization worked to the extreme, like also the other gentleman here pointed out. And we are at this point now, but I believe I concur with Ivan and Robert, and actually I think with the whole panel, that this will remain. I mean, they realize that there are the operators that are new segments of revenue that may stand at par with sportsbook and the other company and the other ventures and offering in portfolio. So in essence, this is the game. I think this new era, this new offering will remain, along with the affiliation with the Belarusian league, of course, which is the most known now league nowadays.
So everyone is an expert now.
Yes.
In regards of audience, for us as a business, it didn't change because we're B2B. We collaborate directly with the operators, platform providers, aggregators, but the end customer changed. And I can explain this very, very easily. As Vasco pointed out earlier, he had a chat with someone belonging to the younger generation, and she didn't see any difference between real sports and virtuals. The thing is, the younger generations, they grew up in this world. For them, PlayStation games, this is normality. This is their normality. So our main customers when it comes to virtual sports were people between 18 and 30, maybe 35 years. This was the core of our business when it comes to the player. After this pandemic, the situation changed because a lot of sportsbook players didn't have any chance. They needed to switch to something else. And they realized that virtual sports is giving them instant gratification. They can place a bet, and in a matter of a few minutes, they know if they won or not. So they have the same thrill that they used to have with sportsbook, but now this instant element comes into play. So I think we gathered a lot of new customers that before maybe didn't know so much about virtual sports.
That's just answering the question from Dr. Holger. I did hear partially, but it was cutting a lot. So probably we'll have a meeting with both of us so you can explain me the legal issues that I was not able to listen to. Now, again, this is I would stay here talking to you guys like for the rest of the morning, to be honest, because there's so much to be said. And to me, this is again, I came to this business not that long ago. I'm talking about two years ago, and to me, the esports and virtual sports were a bit of a gray area in terms of knowledge. But the thing is, every time that I approach this and every time that I talk about this, I feel older and older because the new generations, for them, as you said, Robert, this is the new normal for them. And when you talk about sports and they answer me back with CSGO or League of Legends, something else, as I'm talking about my team of football or anything else, for them it's exactly the same thing. So they say, no, it's of course. And there's a really good guy that plays for a professional team in the US, and all this, to me personally, because I'm not an expert as you guys are, this was actually extremely interesting to see how all of this at the end comes together. It's betting. It's just a matter of classic sports betting or this new era. I know virtual sports are here for a long time. I don't know if our audience has any questions. I know I just gave you guys like 4 minutes. I'm sorry, but this was getting interesting. So if anyone in our audience wants to chat besides Dr. Holger, because I already answered the question, I didn't hear everything. If anyone has any questions for our lovely guests or not, if there's no question, I will have one.
I had something myself, actually, for Robert.
Yeah. Yes, please.
But have you found that with the virtuals, with sports, you have a lot of emotional betting. Now, have you found that in the virtuals, we've sort of coming to recreating that emotional betting using certain tools with virtuals? Actually, Tassos and Robert could come into this, because we do know that it is a huge part of our industry, emotional betting. And I'd like to see if you manage to, during this pandemic, recreate a little bit of that substrata that drives our industry.
Yeah, this instant gratification that virtual sports gives definitely brings out a different type of emotions than normal sportsbook, for instance, where you're very familiar with the team, you study the players, you know also their personal lives, maybe because you're reading different news. In virtual sports, you don't really have this, but you have a different type of emotion that keeps you hooked on the screen and keeps you playing every day, maybe.
I think, though, if I may intervene, that actually, I mean, we had applied, maybe more companies do that, this trading of the odds. So in essence, you may, let's say, see a virtual event that is very close to reality in respect to the odds that the current real event offers. So this is engaging. It gives you the security that something is not completely random, although it's defined randomly, but it's very close to reality and engaging. So you have the possibility to bet on your team, on real statistics, anytime you want.
Okay.
And on top of this, also with the instant virtual games, we made it even more faster, I would say. So it's even faster now. And the instant gratification that Robert mentioned, I mean, it's more instant even.
So those who already like sports betting, classic ones, should be as well keen to starting on this new era. I know we only have 2 minutes, and since I was told this is a little bit like the Oscars, once the clock is down, we will all be shut down. I would like you to really thank you all for the inputs. It's I would honestly stay here like the whole day talking about this, because I think this is extremely interesting, and you all shared very, very interesting points of view. Some of them it met my expectations. Others I was actually a little bit surprised, but more than anything, in my opinion, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, with a bigger lever, lower lever, and but I think this is something that is here to stay, that we should all acknowledge the existence of especially because virtual sports is here for longer, but especially esports and this new generation and all these new potential future batters are in line, and to know that we have you guys and companies like you guys that are ready for it and are already delivering it, and it's really reassuring. And again, thank you all for being here. It was really a pleasure, and hope to meet you all again in future panels. And again, lovely to see you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Well done.
Pleasure, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye. See you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice conference.
Have a nice conference.
You too.
Likewise. Ciao.